Tamriel has lore deeper than the darkest of barrows, and since Skyrim's release back in 2011, players have been steadily uncovering the mysteries that Bethesda expertly wove into the game. We've got theories, but no conclusive answers to these unsolved mysteries of Skyrim. Morthal has a couple urban legends about their resident Redguard, mage Falion. For instance, he allegedly sacrifices children and devours deer hearts. Although Falion assures the Dragonborn that these are just horrid tales, there is still something about him that doesn't quite add up. Firstly, he can cure vampirism, which is a pretty sweet deal if the player becomes suddenly averse to sunlight.
Meet me at the summoning circle in the marsh at dawn. We shall banish the creature you have become.
Secondly, he claims to have met Daedra and Dwemer and everything in between, which would either suggest an amazing wealth of power or an incredibly long lifespan, since Dwemer disappeared thousands of years prior. Falion is a decent guy, but a frustrating character in the sense that the player never gets to know what his secret is in the quest Falion's Secret. He tells the player not to go out at night and that the marshes are dangerous. Little Agni, Falion's adopted daughter and apprentice, speaks of nightmares of her father making monsters. In the marshes at night, the player can find Falion in a stone summoning circle, but Falion gives no explanation. We may have some idea as to what's happening in the marshes. One Redditor noted that Morthal is surrounded by frozen lakes. The powerful and cruel Volkihar vampires live in frozen depths and reach through the ice to grab unsuspecting victims. Perhaps vampire expert Falion was being true to his word and doing his duty to see Morthal rest in peace by warding off these frozen foes, but this remains only a theory. Sybille Stentor is the court wizard of the Blue Palace in Solitude, appointed by the late High King Tarik, whom she helped to raise. She's sharp-tongued and even sharper-toothed. She's a vampire. It's no secret that she makes use of the prisoners from Castle Dower dungeon as a convenient food source.
Hey, many visitors come to the dungeon. Every now and then, Sybille Stentor will come by looking for volunteers.
She has an antagonistic relationship with Falk Firebeard, the steward to Jarl Elisef. Firebeard is the one who summons the Dragonborn to Solitude to investigate Wolfskull Cave, where a ritual master was resurrecting Potema Septim, the Wolf Queen. Though the Dragonborn dispatches the Necromancer, they later have to return in order to defeat the former Empress's angry spirit. It is after completing this quest that Sybille starts to act odd. There is a bug in which Sybille will sleep constantly after the Dragonborn has defeated the Wolf Queen. She will not leave her bed, not even to feed on the prisoners in the dungeon. There have been no official patches to this problem, just a couple fan-made mods. Cut dialogue also shows that Sybille was the first to know about Potema's resurrection, even though she had dismissed Firebeard's concerns about Wolfskull Cave. Marrying this information together makes Sybille's sudden narcolepsy seem deliberate rather than accidentally mysterious. There were an awful lot of vampires in the catacombs on the way to Potema's throne, after all. Early in the game, it is clear that there is someone watching the Dragonborn. Although this is a creepy sentiment, the Watcher in question calls themselves a friend. The moment the Dragonborn absorbs their first dragon soul and shouts their mighty Thum, both the Greybeards and this mysterious person are alerted. Whether the Dragonborn is on the standard mission at the Western Watchtower or elsewhere in the world, they will soon after receive a letter from a courier saying that they've caused a bit of a stir and that not everyone is anxious for the return of the Dragonborn. However, the unnamed writer wants the Dragonborn to continue on, saying Skyrim needs a true hero these days. This friend has eyes everywhere. Players have claimed that the letter has found them after returning from unknowable places like Sovngarde or the Soul Cairn. Out in the wilds, in the darkest of dungeons, at the tops of mountains, this stranger is watching. Who are they? We genuinely don't know. The only hint is that whoever is writing these has knowledge of locations with words of power, and that's pretty much where the trail runs cold. It's hard to forget the fate of Lokir, the first death of many in the game. He was that horse thief who tried running from the chopping block only to be shot down by archers. Before his death, he takes the advice of his fellow criminals in the wagon and thinks of home.
A Nord's last thoughts should be of home.
Thinking of Rorikstead might not be that comforting, though. Rorikstead is weird, to say the least. And the people there make no mention of dearly departed Lokir. The village is fairly remote, small, but has too many inconsistencies to stay inconspicuous, despite Whiterun guards saying that it is a boring posting. Rorikstead was once Roriksteading and has had a long history of thriving, dying, and rebuilding. Rorik, the village noble, comments how strange their bountiful harvests are, considering the harsh terrain. The local mage, Juan Manette, shushes him, attributing their success to hard work, but the mage does have a secret. He's teaching a local child magic.
Joanne is teaching me magic. He says I'm real good.
There's nothing wholly weird about that, but the shifty way he's going about it raises suspicions. Not to mention the fact that every home in Rorikstead contains soul gems and a book or two about the Daedra. So the fan theory follows that the people of Rorikstead are Daedra worshippers, which is how they are able to get their famously prosperous harvests. But we don't know for sure what Rorikstead's secret is or why they've buried all traces of Lokir. There are a lot of strange items to be found in Skyrim, so a bug in a jar might not seem so weird. Scattered throughout the game, there are 5 bugs trapped in jars for the player to find. The bugs themselves aren't nearly as interesting as the runes found on the inside of the lids, however. The runes and their possible translations have left fans drawing maps, scouring the internet, and tearing out their hair in true conspiracy theory fashion. Some sleuths have even insisted that the locations of the jars are more important to the ultimate mystery, going as far as to make a sort of pentagram transmutation circle that the location seemed to create. Could these jars indicate an oncoming apocalypse? An attempt by the Thalmor to wipe out all of mankind? Despite seeming to be integral to some kind of quest, the jars have ultimately no known meaning. This is one mystery solved by an interview with a developer in which we learned that they were actually part of a larger chunk of content that was cut. But the larger question remains, what were the significance of the jars supposed to be in the first place? Of all Skyrim's screwy NPCs, the crazed beggar Narfi in Ivarstead ranks among the looniest. He asks the Dragonborn to look for his missing sister Rada, heartbroken that he didn't get the chance to say goodbye to her as he was able to with his father and mother.
Everyone looked and no one could find her. Wilhelm said she'll be back. Told Narfi not to worry. Rada will come back.
The player is directed to the local innkeeper Wilhelm, who may have information as to her whereabouts. Wilhelm tells the player that Rada disappeared a year ago and that ever since, Narfi has been speaking in third person and rhyming. Taking pity on him, Wilhelm told Narfi that she was coming back, but really...
I just said that to make the poor guy feel better. I'm pretty sure she's dead.
The player might then search her out on the islands east of Ivarstead, where she was known to wander, but this information is a dead end. What remains of Rada is nowhere near there, instead found at the bottom of the river southeast of the village. On her skeleton are alchemical ingredients and a necklace. The weirdness really unfolds if the player bypasses Narfi to confirm the necklace's origin with Wilhelm, who says the same thing Narfi does when shown the item. This.
You saw Rada? Did you tell her Narfi cries? Did you tell her Narfi never say goodbye like mother and father?
Wilhelm sounds strangely like Narfi, suggesting, well, who knows? In the end, Narfi will either accept his sister's death or go on hoping to find her, but that doesn't explain who sent her to the next life. Speaking of runes, let's talk about Rune, a member of the Thieves Guild with no memory of his past or what his real name is. He was found washed up on shore near Solitude. The poor but kind-hearted fisherman that found him only had one clue as to the boy's identity, a rock with strange writing on it. So he dubbed the boy Rune and raised him as his own son. Rune will admit that most of the money he pilfers for the Thieves Guild is spent towards his ultimate goal of finding out about his past. That gold has been spent in vain. A note can be found in the Thieves Guild's cistern from Ethel Newberry saying that they have failed to find any trace of Rune's parents. Sounds like just the job for the ever-resourceful Dragonborn, right? The conversation one can have with Rune certainly seems to suggest as much, as the player promises to keep an eye out for anything. Alas, there is no follow-up for poor Rune. He appears to be the victim of a quest that never made it into the final game and was later abandoned, a quest that has haunted completionists for years. In Skyrim, you can encounter Khajiit, Redguard, Argonians, and actual dragons, but you'll never see a living Dwemer. All that is left of the ancient race are their machines and booby traps, telling of vast technological riches and a society that should have stayed on into the modern age. So what happened? Where are all the Dwemer? Engineers and artisans, they were more advanced than any other race back in the First Era, which makes their vanishing all the more mysterious. According to ancient lore, it happened all at once during the Battle of Red Mountain. Ancestors of the Dark Elves were outraged when it appeared that the Dwemer had found the torn-out heart of Lorcan, the god who created the mortal realm. The Dwemer created profane weapons in order to channel the heart's power in an attempt to make their people divine. However, when its power was used, it appeared to backfire entirely. The whole race of Dwemer subsequently disappeared. This event is described as the most profound mystery of all of Tamriel. Scholars are left to scratch their heads at what could have become of the Dwemer. Reddit users are baffled too, but have their theories. Maybe all Dwemer souls were absorbed by the brass god Namidium, or maybe they reached a higher level of consciousness. Unless Elder Scrolls 6 holds the key to the Dwemer's mysterious past, we'll never know. By level 80, the Dragonborn is getting used to their vast skill and power, but Bethesda doesn't want to let players get cocky. Level 80 is when the player's skill is truly tested. On the streets of a major city, the Ebony Warrior will appear, faceless behind his intricate armor.
The time has come. I have done all that can be done. There is nothing left. No quests to be undertaken, no villains to be slain, no challenges to face.
The Dragonborn is the Ebony Warrior's very last conquest, the only one worthy enough to send him to Sovngarde. The warrior then awaits his death at the Last Vigil, a campsite tucked away in the Velothi Mountains. And it's a fight that players have to carefully prepare for by gathering their best weapons, armors, pals, and maybe a few wheels of cheese just in case. Even then, the player might be caught off guard when they discover that the Ebony Warrior can steal the Dragonborn's thunder and use the unrelenting Force Shout. But just who is this formidable foe? By now you would have surely heard the tales of an insanely powerful warrior in all black armor, right? The only thing Skyrim fans really know for sure is that the Ebony Warrior is a Redguard, and he's really, really, really hard to best.